So, Aaron, you were kind of talking about a little earlier. Before we got on the show, you were kind of talking about jump features and working your way up and that kind of thing. So, give us some of your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
yeah. So I think it'd be fun to like start doing them, and maybe I've done some videos. Maybe do a videos, but sort of break down the different style of jumps and just basically. I think I'd like to see like for the beginners, like just let them know it's like don't worry about that jump. Don't worry about the doubles or the step ups. Just here's the perfect single on the track and just get some distance and just keep going because you got the ability to start understanding bike handling in the air. But then, once you do that, then you work up to, whether it's a table or whatever. But understand that those, like that fundamental single or a shallow table or even a shallow double, like that's such a common and valuable jump to really get because you're going to learn everything else. So you'll learn how the bike handles in the air, time in the air, what happens if you're dealing with the rut on the jump phase without the issue of running into, coming up short, coming up long.
Right.
Um, and then, but when you do start doing something with a steep enough jump phase that you need to time it, then like what, why you need to backside stuff. Like I saw a few weeks, well, last fall we were at a track and we just saw this flat landing time after time after time on a jump that was very easy to over jump to be sure, but it's like, dude, like you're learning how not to jump that jump. Like the point is, it's a timing jump, and if you go if you go 2 mile an hour faster, you're going to lose a half a second as opposed to the guy that backsides it and really gets back on the gas.
Right.
And then sort of go into why scrubbing works. It you know what it really does. It's like, well, we know it you stay lower, but why do you stay lower? It's because you're basically changing the angle of the jump face. But then sometimes you don't want to do that because if you need to backside something, and I've seen that happen too, where guys are just got this wicked scrub, so they're scrubbing and then just clipping the landing or flat landing, and it's like, no, in this case that scrub's not a good idea because if you can't, I mean, the acceleration you get on a backside like that is huge into the next straight. So if it's a jump that requires you to backside it and get back on the gas to do whatever the next, maybe it's just a straight, or maybe you need to go into another double. And we're not about teaching a bunch of supercross skills, but these things, these fundamentals, like why you do things the way you do, and then how, like, because that, I mean, you guys have heard this too, like when you're one of the most common questions is how do you scrub? And it's like, well, you start just by leaning the bike over and like understanding that what you're trying to do is bring your two mass centers together as you come up the jump face, like understanding that. And then you just, as you start doing that, it just naturally turns into a scrub, and it may not be above a scrub. I mean, there's a limit, but anyway, I
Still
think
staying
there's a
well in.
lot to that we could work on and sort of develop the theory on that I think would help people understand. You understand what you're trying to do,
Right.
so then it makes it easier to do it. So
And on that note, you're talking about flat landing or clipping it. Also, the other thing, part of that is how many hits is your body taking?
yeah,
How much exertion are you putting out? Is it worth what you know, are you losing time that way? And are you actually, you know, taken away from your ability to finish the race strong and fast and hard? And I mean, that's another big part of that whole thing that you were just talking about, and learning how and when and what to do on those types of things. Because there is certain times when it makes sense to make the pass and flat land it,
yeah,
because a lot of times you can make that pass on that particular jump and get by somebody, but you don't want to do that every single time.
right.
You know?
Especially on a GP,
Right? For sure.
we definitely see that in the GPs, and I love that. That like no matter who you are, you're wore out at the end of that. You know,
sure.
So are you dropping 5 seconds a lap or a half a second? You know, what's happening to you in the last 10 minutes? So
that's the biggest thing. This is kind of shifting gears. I don't want to get back to this, but I did hear something that I think is kind of pertinent here. You know, we've had all kinds of discussions about Brian Deegan and you know, had our different thoughts and different things on it. Well, it was kind of funny. I was watching, he had one of his videos here this week came out, and you know, he was kind of asking what is the most important thing about motocross, or what's the most important thing that you have to do. And he looks over at his son, and he goes, it was kind of quiet, so I had to listen to it a couple times. I think he said, "Don't quit." And then Brian goes on to say, "Yeah, that's the most important thing, is don't quit." And that, to me, if there's anything I could give to somebody that's motocrossing, if you want to be a good motocrosser, it's that thing, don't quit. So like when you're out there practicing and somebody goes by you, and then you just kind of like fall off the pace and then decide, "No, you know, I'm going to pull off and go back to the pits," or whatever. You still had it in you, but just mentally you let yourself drop that.
Yeah.
That thing right there starts building the bad habit, and it takes away from that mental toughness. And that, you know, we were talking about what that's the one thing that Deegan has done different than anybody else, is that he hasn't, you know, he doesn't quit. And through the goods and the bads and the different things that have happened to him, he's just continually kept going forward, moving forward. And now he's at a place where, yeah, we don't see anybody in the 250 class that has anything for him.
Right.
And he's built himself, that mental thing that he's done there is that thing of, no matter what, I'm always going to be moving forward. I'm always going to, and never stop. And if you do that in motocross, to me, that is probably, you can be a slower rider, but if you build that mental toughness to where you never ever really let yourself realize that you're on your last leg, you know,
right.
Whatever workout things you do, you always want to practice that thing to where, you know, you're running on a treadmill, you're riding a stationary bike, you're climbing a hill, you're running up a hill, you're whatever you're doing. You get to that point where you're subconsciously put your mind in a different place and just mind over matter, that whole pain kind of a thing. And that same thing ends up being the same thing that happens in motocross when you don't quit. And I mean,
Right.
like, say you're tired, but yeah, you could do 3 more laps, stay in there and keep going. You know, you might have to learn where you slow up just a little bit and then start going hard again. But if nothing else, don't ever stop. So, I mean, that's...
And it's its own reward. Like, you know, we all want to be fast. We always want to be faster. But at the end of the day, there's one fastest guy. The rest of us should be doing it for fun,
Right.
or some other reason. And I think that those times when you just completely wore yourself out, like, that's an incredible reward in and of itself.
Right.
And to train your body to do that, and moto's one of them that you like we'll keep talking about baseball, and I love baseball, but seldom in baseball are you to the point like, I can't go another
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't happen.
Right.
But, you know, wrestling, moto, backpacking, like, you get to your limit. And well, Spencer and I raced the Hare Scrambles. It was the 3 hour, and we both were like, we registered as on the 3 hour, and some guys will go to a 3 hour and sort of pace themselves, but we don't. Like, we race it just like moto, and we both knew as like, well, we're gonna go as long as we can. Well, I ended up, kind of a weird story, but it's kind of fun. But I got stuck in the mud really bad, and I was like, I couldn't even move my bike, and I pull, and I ended up like, I'm about to pass out. So that was my limit. And then Spencer made it with, he went like 2.5 hours, and I probably went about 2. And when I got in, like, I couldn't move for 20 minutes, you know what I mean? And Spencer comes in, and I'm like, dude, you're almost done. Like, and he goes, yeah, but I'm out of gas. And I'm like, "Here's my gas." Yeah. By then I was ready to go. I wasn't ready to ride again, but I'll help you gas. And he's like, "Yeah, no." And he couldn't. It was, he said, he's done. Like, and it's like that is a good feeling in and of itself. And then it does it, like, it just builds you for that race. So you don't get that, oh, things are going a little wrong, I'm going to pull over.
Right.
And I think we see that in the greats, right? Like when you're watching, well, what the pros, and Eli's always the best example. You're like, guys, 2 laps down. Why is he even going back out? Because that's what he does.
Right.
He is not gonna stop.
And that's the difference in the people that have been the greats in the sport and the people that haven't. That's the catapult moment. You get back up and you catch up. That's the Ryan Dungey. Your bike doesn't start, and you have to go back to the pit, finally get it running, and then you come back. Yeah. There's a couple of those things Hannah did. I mean, there's so many of those. That's the difference between the greats and those are the things that legends are made of right there.
That's true.
And when you've done some sort of thing sort of like that, it may not be anything to that extreme, but like you got, I don't know, something happened, you had a bad start, you're in the back, and you work your way through it, and you just keep fighting through. Man, there's nothing better than when that race gets done and you know what you did. Plus, it becomes part of you. It becomes part of your personality. It becomes part of what you do in the business world, what you do in as a parent, as a husband, as a friend. It's that character building thing that comes from those, because you just stuck it through. And that's, we always say our sport's a metaphor for life, and it truly is.
Yeah, and I think you take yourself to the limit one time, it's you can, or past, you can do it again.
And the other thing, it always grows. That's the cool thing about our sport, is like, this was hard last time. Well, now this becomes the norm, and then it keeps going, and it grows so fast. Motocross is not one of those sports where you got to keep working out. Well, I mean, you keep working out, but you, like, once you got to this fitness level, you plateau there for a while. It doesn't seem like that happens. It seems like you continue to progress. I mean, eventually you plateau, but I mean, as you're growing in your ability to keep pushing, you just mentally get stronger, physically get stronger, and those become part of your riding skills.
And our GPs have really lent themselves. I think a lot of guys have pushed themselves further than they had before.
For sure.
During one of our GPs.
Especially, because that's another thing nobody ever really talks about. But if you go to most motocross races and they're going to have 2 motos, you're really only racing for 5 minutes.
Right.
5 minutes plus a lap, maybe. And sometimes they might say it's 10 minutes, but very seldom is if you really pay attention to the clock. And the fact is, if every race was 10 and 15 minutes, you'd be there till 7:30. And we know that because we've done that in the past, because we're going to make sure everybody got their full 10, 12 minutes or whatever it was. Didn't have any holdups of the whole day. But by the time you go through every one of those and you keep dropping the gate, and this is if you don't have like a multiple gate drop, it just takes that long. So you might...
See, I like the one moto GP, type thing, because I know my first race with the Gypsies, I was used to doing the 2 moto, and I went out and raced the first one, and I got back in. I remember you came over to my truck, and I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna do it again. And you said, you're done. And I said, really? And I like that, because you kind of get into a groove, and your body's warmed up by then. You don't feel like you're, what I mean, everything's working.
100%.
Yep.
And like you said, you come off the track and you're spent, and all those endorphins are popping around, and you feel like $1,000,000. I mean, you're tired, but mentally you feel like $1,000,000. And when we did the Loretta's qualifier, I think it was, or the one before that, we had the 2 moto format. And
District 30, yeah.
I was like, I don't like it as much. I like the GP style.
Yeah, and then if you can always race more motos.
Yeah.
True.
That's
True.
the other thing is you can race more classes, but there's something about the longer moto that yes, you want to do everything right from the get-go.
Yeah.
But say you don't, the longer moto gives you that option to make up for whatever.
Find your groove.
Find your groove. Or if you get out front, too, it also gives you that thing where you can get yourself that distance and just manage and make somebody earn it. If they're going to come up on you, they have to earn it, and then you can like pogo away from them a little bit so we get back to that same corner when we were both looking at each other. Now I pulled ahead a little bit. So are you going to step it up, or so there's a lot of dynamics there that you don't get in the 5-minute moto. And on our track, quite honestly, if it's a 5 or even a 10-minute moto, you might only get 3 laps.
That's it.
If it's a 10-minute moto, you're going to get 3 laps, and that's not hardly time to get dialed in exactly where you want to be. So.
No, you don't have time for any kind of those 5-minute motos.
Yeah.
And it's just you never settle in. You just you never come off that initial amp, and to me it's just not that much fun. And everybody's got every other story is, well, this little thing went wrong, rather than really building into a race.
In that, you don't say that there's a good line that starts going bad on a 10-minute moto. You don't have time to build a new line. A lot of times that first time you go through that area, nobody's done it. You're just kind of forming that arc. And the second time you go through it, it's like, well, we finally built it. Now I'm able to kind of go through it and play with it a little bit and build it a little bit better and kind of get the dynamics from it. And then the third time, you go through it and you make the pass.
Yeah.
And without having those longer motos, you don't ever build those skills, because it's all about blast. And for me, that's kind of why I never liked arena cross, just because it felt like everyone I ever had, it felt like everybody that I was racing was just well, honestly, the last time I raced it several years ago, I took off, this is in Rapid, went down this straightaway, got the whole shot. Somebody I have never seen before or since took us both out. This is the vet class. Get back up. I think we take off. I think I got back into second place. I don't know if it was the same guy or not. Took us both out again in a corner. Get back up. Get back, I think, going for second place. Going off the finish. There was a double for the finish line. Got jumped right into in midair by another vet rider. Just after that, I was I don't even see any reason to be doing this, because the mentality is just so different. It's nobody's there to race. It's they're there to race, but it's all here and now, right now, and it's all for keeps kind of a thing. And I don't know, it's just not my thing.
Yeah, I remember the first time we did the GP was kind of an accident.
It was a what?
It was kind of an accident because we knew we wanted longer motos. I mean, always waxing about the good old days, right. And then I think we said I don't remember if I think we're going off laps, and we added laps to make we're going to push it because we want longer motos.
Yeah.
And Dan did not like the idea.
I remember that.
And so Dan I don't know if he decided or how it went down, but he added at least a lap to every moto. And this was on the new track, so and I remember the very first, I think the first race was 2-stroke open, and Jaden Ritter won it.
Okay.
And I was timing, it was 30 minutes. The first moto.
Remember that now. That's right.
and it just kept, and there was chatter on the radio, and I remember I was coming off the hill, and you were going the other way, and I don't know if I think we talked a minute, and then I go over to Rochelle, and I'm like, what is going on? And she starts explaining the whole thing to me. But anyway, then we just asked the riders at that point, it's it's like 3:30, 4 o'clock. Do we want to run really short second motos? And I remember Jaden's like, no, because he'd run, I think he was running 3 classes. We figured he's on the track for like an hour and a half already. And so,
Yeah.
and it was like, and I think there was like, obviously, and there's always going to be somebody mad. But mostly the guys everybody enjoyed it. And we're like, hey, that was slick, you know? I mean, and not that we hadn't talked about it before, but the day we did it, we were planning 2 motos. And then it was just like, you know, that went really well.
I totally remember it. Now that you're saying all this, I reminisce on all this because I get all the people that got the complaint, right? And
Right.
that was a rally race. And we also had the goon race that we were putting in that. And I remember those had already gone long just because of what had happened there. And well, we already had everybody signed up for the goon race. And these 2 guys come over to me and they're talking about, well, we want to go to this concert. You know, and we're like, well, we already took the vote. Everybody voted to have long motos, and they were just ticked that we'd done that. And then these guys all start showing up for the goon race.
What is a goon race?
Well, the goon race is a thing that we used to do. Is a blast. So everybody would wear costumes. I'll send you some pictures. Wear costumes. And the idea wasn't to win the race. It was just to go out and do the best goon riding you could possibly
Be
do.
silly, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that was back when everybody was goon riding on purpose just for fun. So there were some pretty good goon riders. And anyway, these guys were looking at that, and I looked over and I was like, that's the goon race. And they're like, what the what's the goon race? I was like, you know, I can't even, you're just going to have to watch it. And then they said, so you're not going to shorten these last motors down to two laps or something? I was like, no. Well, we're going to miss this concert. It's like, well, everybody wants to ride, so that's what we're going to do. But anyway, I walked off, and then they dropped the gate, and people, you know, nothing goes as supposed to go on a motocross race. We had people going around in circles around the crow's nest and one thing after another, and these 2 guys are just shaking their head like, what in the world is that? But yeah, I remember that race because I think we finally got done. It was late. I want to say it was like 7 o'clock or something. Probably our longest race ever, but we
I
got
get a feeling this is going to be a good year for our club with, you know, the practices and the races and all that stuff. I think it's going to be really good.
It's going to be a blast. Yep, I agree. I mean, all the things that we've been working for all these years are finally coming to fruition. We're not going to have it all this year, but at least now we can kind of see those things happening, and you know, where we can actually do some of these mentorship programs and different classes, and you know, intro into motocross kind of things. So,
yeah, you know what's funny? Because I was kind of thinking about that with, you know, as we were taking the arc of that conversation, which I think, you know, this is where that's how things start, right? You think about them, you discuss them, you get the word out there, then people give you their thoughts, and you kind of move it towards what works for everybody. And I think it's the right time. I feel like kind of there's this separation between moto and supercross that people are aware of. And you see different things being successful. Like I hear a lot about Mesquite, and obviously there's so I think Mesquite and Mankato, you see these really successful tracks that are kind of doing something different. We're successful. We're doing something different. And then like that Nebraska series, it's bigger again. And I think that Nebraska series, honestly, from there's a lot of things I like about it, but the number one thing is kind of, I think what Chip was mentioning, where it's all about the moto camaraderie. Mm-hmm. Like the whole mentality at those events it's just different. Like,
right.
It's like it's a Sunday. I mean, we're riding hard. You want to win. It's technically called the Great Plains Vintage, but it's probably 3/4 modern bikes now. And I think the reason for the popularity is just because the way the series runs, and it's just the culture of that series. But then it's the culture of the series, and then the fact that it's so popular shows that people are interested in that. They want to go to the track and have a good time. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't want to feel out of place. And somehow that series just kind of really pulls off that sort of old school vibe. And I think we do too, so.
And on that note, old school vibe, I'm not going to say who it is yet, but I had one of our local, well, motorcycle people, I'll just say that, contact us and wants to be doing some sponsorship. And, it's kind of reminds me of the way things used to be. This particular person has been around the area for a long time, and now they have a better job and basically want to, get behind the sport. And so that's all I'm going to say. I'll have more on the next show, but we're seeing it from the sponsorship side too. So that's kind of exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah, it does kind of, and I think it makes sense because it's like, yeah, why did, like, back in the day, why did anybody sponsor anything? Just because it was good things were happening and they want to be a part of it. And I think that's clearly what we're doing. And, and hopefully some of these new ideas we have on mentorship and coaching, like, and it isn't just because we think we're so smart. It's not just us. It's whoever wants to be a part of it to develop this community,
It's that whole full circle thing. It's like, if you can have the bike shops there, showing their wares, showing their bikes, showing the stuff that they, helmets, whatever, showing their support for the sport, it's going to come back to them in spades because it does grow that community like you're talking about. And that's the one thing we really lack here is you go other places, and if there's two dealerships in town, they'll both have something there, a trailer or showing some bikes or doing something. And we really don't have that much here. They show a little interest, but it's not like we see other places. And that's one of the things I really hope to see change. If we had them backing us backing the entire motocross community the way that they should, it would just be, we'd see huge changes for everybody. So.